Everyone, I'd like to call the September 7th, 2023 Parking, Traffic, and Safety Committee meeting to order. Would you please take the roll?
Mary Lou McElwain.
Here.
Steve Pesci.
Here.
Mark Siracusa.
Here.
Erica Wygonik. Here. Deputy Police Chief Mike Maloney.
Here.
Fire Chief Bill McQuillan.
Here.
Public Works Director Peter Rice.
Here.
Stephanie Casella, Planning Department. Here. Chairman Andrew Bagley.
Here. And could we have the financial report? And I'm wondering if we should move one of the
I was
microphones.
just thinking, slide, everybody slide one down, because Stephanie doesn't have one. Down?
Sorry, stuff. Didn't even recognize that.
Stephanie needs a
Jesus Christ. For sure. Oh, and gentlemanly. Okay.
Yes, this would be a good time to note that Harold Whitehouse, after many years of service, has resigned his position, and Dr. Erica Wygonik is now a full committee member, and we're in the process of appointing a new alternate. So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the financial report as presented.
I move that we accept the report from July 31st, 2023.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, so now we're going to do public comment. Do we have a lot of people on Zoom?
Just 3 right now.
Okay, we've got a
One
pretty
person with a hand.
pretty full agenda, so I'd like people to keep their comments to about 3 minutes or so, so everybody has a chance to speak. And whoever would like to go first, just come up to a microphone, state your name and address, and address the committee.
Good morning, Francesca Marconi Fernald, property at 177 Mechanic Street and 1000 Maplewood Ave. I just want to say thanks for the site walk on Mechanic and Hunking the other day. I'm in favor of no parking on the one side of the street opposite the water from the Hunking to Pickering with the picket fences. Historically, no one's ever parked there, but now after enforcement of the current ordinance, it's begun to happen, and it makes pulling out of my lot especially difficult, and especially the handicap spot in my lot for my business. Yes, it may be a temporary inconvenience for some of my customers, but we'll get through it just fine. I'll try to help my customers the best I can. I'm mostly concerned about safety and fire and ambulance and being able to get through, as well as the trash and recycling. I think having no parking on that section will make everything much easier on the street for everyone. Again, historically, no one has ever parked there. I understand the enforcement of the current ordinance and what has happened, and I understand that there may be some more discussion further on Pickering Ave in that section about maybe zhuzhing it a little bit, maybe getting another space in there or whatnot. And I know that's further discussion. But for today, I'm in favor of no parking between Hunking and Pickering on the, I'll say, the picket fence side of the street versus the one. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Francesca. Whoever would like to speak next, just come up to the mic, please.
How you doing? Steve Marison, 38 Pickering Street. I just wanted to say that I had no idea about the intersection changes, the ordinance, and I wish that there had been more reach out to the residents in the area. I know the businesses were all notified, but I didn't know it until after the fact. Rather disappointing. The other thing is there are 4 spaces, I think, that don't interfere. I know the ordinance, I understand, but since there's so many people that have to park there, including the workers, I wondered if there's 4 spaces that could be reinstated as parking with an exception to the ordinance. 2 are against the yacht club's wall, and the other 2 are right on the corner. Because of the telephone poles and the walls that are there, it doesn't interfere with large vehicles making those turns. You should take a look at that.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave. And I just want to let Steve know I was not informed either of any changes, so I don't think it went to all businesses. I was informed by friends, and I was really pleased that Mr. Syracuse has stopped down. He was the only person to stop down to look at what you have on your agenda for future thoughts, which affects my property. And on the future thoughts, I do drive a big vehicle down there. I've been down there for 22 years. I also know that the fire, that corner where I live becomes a practice turn. I've been told numerous times when the fire truck comes down in chaos, it's so that they're testing out someone new. So I know that it can make that turn. On your agenda today, you're looking at a couple parking spots in front of my house, which I would hope that you would not take away. I also know that I showed Mr. Syracuse where I do have some pins. Some of the property is mine. And also, I am fine with the property right across from my house, that one little corner. Most people don't park there. We go out. We kind of have been done for 22 years. We've done a really good job managing ourselves. We're looking at 8 weeks of chaos, and I know that. We have Francesca's that's open for Gino's. We have Brewster's open. We have the South End Yacht Club, and then we have My Marina. So we have 8 weeks that we have to kind of manage and make sure that people are being safe. And if someone is parked across the street, we've been known to go over and tell them to move. So I get that one corner where all the big red flowers, so that's kind of how people know where it is, that there might need to be a no parking there. But I would ask that you keep the parking in front of my house and on South Mill Street. And I also agree with what Steve said. If we're going to do something like this or make some major changes that could affect businesses and people's parking along South Mill Street, a lot of people in those houses do not have parking. So again, we have watched it, we have monitored it. When there's a snow ban, people can park in my driveway. We have made it work for at least the 22 years I've lived down there. So I ask you to consider the fact that we are a business, we're a commercial waterfront, and I know there's other places in the city I can go and I see the same concerns and problems. If I felt it was a safety, I think the one parking on the corner across from me could be a safety issue because it's a blind spot and people can't see. But other than that, I do drive a 33-foot RV down in there, and I can make the corner fine. So thank you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Esther.
Hi, I'm Susan Alex. I live at 15 Mount Vernon Street. I just have a really quick comment. I go to the South End. I obviously don't live there, but one thing as a resident I feel can happen with not notifying people is you can't change neighborhoods by one person's opinion. It's a neighborhood, which means people have opinions, and it's really not in the best interest of anyone to let something happen that gets pushed through, or that someone who has a very strong opinion about it kind of gets changes. So that's just my view from a resident in Portsmouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Hello. My name is Greg Abear. I'm at 183 Hillside Drive in Portsmouth, and I have take one and pass around. This is just probably stuff for to look at later. Thursday afternoon before Labor Day, the Hillside neighborhood, including 27 children, we had walking and biking access through what's known as the ABC building. and on Tuesday morning, we did not. A fence was constructed across the cut-through that people have been using, and we use that because nobody feels safe going across Greenleaf and then across Lafayette from our neighborhood. So because of that, we met as a neighborhood and did a little survey, and so that's what you're getting is the results of that survey. We did that on Tuesday, and it represents, we've collected 31 surveys representing 28 of the 36 homes on our street, because we wanted to include everybody. There are a couple of adults from the same household. There's one student that wanted to submit one as well, and as well as a grandparent who is frequently takes care of the children that live on that street. And so there's three kind of pieces of information in there. First is the summary of the survey. Second is the sort of custom pieces that people add, why they don't feel safe, what recommendations they would say to make feel safe, other than kind of a list we came up with. And then finally, a map of the area. We have a little blow-up one, too. I know we only have a couple minutes here, and hopefully we'll have some time, I think, at the end to kind of go back and look at that. But we've got a situation that wasn't an issue because we were using a cut-through, and then the landowner put a fence up. And so we have middle schoolers, high schoolers, people with strollers, older people that uniformly, and I didn't expect this when we did the survey, nobody feels safe using the existing sort of crosswalks because of the dangerous sight lines of that intersection, and we need a pretty quick response and resolution because we can't use what people had been using for a long time.
Great, thank you, Greg.
Great, thank you.
Good morning, Sue Polidura, Middle Street. And I just have a question regarding the private parking lots in Portsmouth. I found a situation on Saturday. I parked in a place I thought was managed by the city. I didn't have too many clues that it wasn't otherwise. Even the place where you pay the meter looked the same. So I figure I'm going to the Athenaeum. I'm just going to be there an hour. I have veterans plates, which usually means that I have 2 hours free parking. So I parked there. I was gone for an hour. I come back and I have a ticket. And that's when I went to the city's office to find out why I got a ticket having veterans plates. They told me that's a private parking lot. I'm like, what? First thing I've learned about it. And I just would like to know, why does it look so much like any other parking lot? I went back there subsequently, and I saw a sign that said this is a private parking lot. It was about this big. So if they're going to look the same, if they're going to have the same type of consequences, but none of the benefits, because the city is the one that allows veterans to have 2 hours free parking, the city of Portsmouth. So if we're going to have the same consequences, but none of the benefits, people kind of need to know. I usually park in the parking garage in that area that now is all blocked up when I go to do research at the Athenaeum, and I figure, oh, this must be kind of the replacement while this is going on. And I found out that that wasn't true. So now I have a $35 ticket that I'm going to have to deal with. And it's like, I'm just confused. I'd like to know how many other places are like that. I know the Sheraton has its own place. I have no difficulty at all telling that belongs to another building. But there are some that need to be better identified. That's not governed by city statute or regulations of any sort. And when you go in there, you're expecting something different. So anyways, I just would like to know, maybe making this a little bit clearer so other people would know. I've been in the city for a very long time, so it's like, I don't know why I did not know about this. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Good
morning, committee. My name is Liza Hewitt. I live at 726 Middle Road. It's with sadness that I report that after 3 years of work by this committee to lower the average speed on Middle Road, the Middle Road Speedway is back. You probably realize that this committee was successful in lowering the average speed by lowering the speed limit to 25 and installing speed indicators. With the Department of Public Works decision in July to remove the speed indicators, the average speed has increased once again. I want to thank 3 members of this committee, Mr. Siracusa, Mr. Pesci, and Ms. McElvin, for your support at the August meeting for a reinstallation of the speed indicators. I wish you had been successful in convincing the rest of the committee of the important piece those speed indicators played in lowering the overall speed. I hope you will continue to advocate for the residents' safety in the Middle Road neighborhood and continue and convince the other members of your committee to do the same. On the subject of the removal of the parking on the corner of South Mill Street and Pickering Ave, I've worked down in that area part-time this summer. While I agree that perhaps the tight corner across the street from the water should be considered for no parking, I strongly disagree with the removal of the parking on the water side of the street and the house on that corner. With the removal of many parking spots further down the street on Mechanic Street, the preservation of this parking area becomes increasingly important. I'm constantly witnessing tourists from out of town seeking parking spots so that they are able to walk around the south end, frequenting the businesses. Businesses such as Saunders depend on that parking for their employees as well. Finally, removal of spots on High Street. I guess as a resident, I'd like to know what the problem is that you're trying to solve by removing the parking spots in this location. Typically, this committee hears such requests because there's a problem with the way the parking is currently configured. Thus, you are looking at how you can solve a parking problem. That does not seem to be the problem here. The removal of these spots appears, and I don't know, but it appears to be considered so that the developer is able to beautify the area to charge more for his future condominiums. That's not really a parking problem. I will remind you that the City Council has already agreed to take away 2 spots in the Hanover Garage at this developer's request, and that the same developer is advocating for the removal of additional spots in the garage to house a garage dump. So this is about more than just the removal of 5 parking spots. I will also remind you that the outdoor dining in front of the Thirsty Moose, even with the outdoor dining in front of the Thirsty Moose, even more parking spots are removed for about 5 months during the year. Please think of the impact of the businesses in this area and to the abutting neighbors and to the residents overall who depend on this parking to be able to do their business downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Liza.
Richard Huda, 280 South Street. I'm here to talk to you this morning about the McNabb project that has come to your attention for removing spaces on High Street, Ladd Street, and the loading zone. I've prepared this because I don't think we have enough time to talk about this, and I have quite a few questions that I didn't get to address at the City Council meeting, so I think this is the proper place to address those. If everybody has a copy, I'm going to start at the top by just discussing High Street, because I don't know if there was enough information on your drawings for Ladd Street. So basically, I think I want to just lay out what we're looking at here. High Street, the total space, the amount of space that we have to work with is 30 feet. So currently, contrary to what the developer stated at the meeting down there, we are ADA compliant on the sidewalks. So currently, we have a standard travel lane of 12 feet, standard parking space of 8, and ADA compliant sidewalks of 5 feet. High Street is currently a one-way street. A change to a two-way street must be designed to meet the complete design specs of the complete streets. So PTS, as I understand it, is here to ensure the complete streets design guidelines are implemented for reconstruction. That's what is proposed for this. Whether Mr. McNabb is adding underground utilities or not, it is still a reconstruction. So that would come under your purview. So the current, I just went over the current measurements. At the City Council meeting of 8/7, the proposal that was given to the City Council and reviewed and okayed was for 2 travel lanes at 8 feet each, which is 16 foot, elimination of the 5 parking spaces and the loading zone, and for 2 7-foot wide sidewalks. This was also shown as the 2 travel lanes were shown as a 2-way. Next, the one that was given in your packet, 9/5, we have a different proposal. We have 2 travel lanes at 9 feet, no parking spaces, and we have 2 6-foot sidewalks. If I could read it right, I had a hard time finding all of the widths and the specs on this sheet. That may be me. I'm not an engineer. The point I want to bring to your attention is this does not comply with the complete streets either. This is a city core slow streets. So the questions I would like you to keep in mind as the presentation is going on are, number one, the presented proposals seem to be fluid. We've had one proposal given to the council. We've had another proposal given to you. Which one are they going to go for? That's the first thing. Is this proposed change to High Street from a 1-lane, 1-way street to a 2-lane? Next question. What is
It's been 3 minutes. Can you condense the...
Yep, I'm just going to finish the question, so you'll have it here, Mr.
Okay, but we want to
Bagley.
get to everybody that has to speak this morning.
Yep. What is the formal process for this? Is this really a new 2-way street? And the complete street design here requires curbs for city streets. This is a main point for safety down there, and this is committees. When you take the plan here is to take away the curbs. This is a very busy street. This has been compared to Chestnut Street, which the traffic volume is not even comparable. You have trucks backing up, doing deliveries. You have garbage trucks that are going to come in there, and you're putting ADA compliant sidewalks in there with the rest of the volume of pedestrians coming in and out. So that's a big safety concern. The other concern is I do believe that the fire department has not looked at this. Suggested next steps, this should go to the technical advisory committee for review and validation. There is a lot of safety issues here, and I don't see that this committee is qualified to look at that before all of these have been answered. Thank you.
Morning. Barbara DiStefano, 90 Brewery Lane. I would like to speak strongly in favor of Mr. McNabb's plan for High Street, Ladd Street, and Haven Court. He's going to pay for the beautification, for changing it to all brick. There's still sidewalk, but not sidewalk type situation, which makes it safer for people in wheelchairs or just people walking down that street. He's going to pay for all the underground utilities and things that need to be changed there. There'll still be a loading zone on Ladd Street, and we can give up 5 parking spaces. 2 of them are 15-minute. People can just park around right on Congress Street, and if need be, put a couple more 15-minute parking spaces there. Or in the summertime, if you're going to keep outdoor dining for the Thirsty Moose, et cetera, right there, just move the barricades down a smidge and, keep some parking right there for 15-minute. I don't think losing the parking spaces is going to be any issue. We're trying to get to a more walkable city and less traffic downtown, so I'm just strongly in favor of the whole process. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Anybody else in the room would like to speak? Do we have any hands on Zoom?
Yes, we have 2 people.
All right.
Robin Russo.
Robin Russo, please go ahead.
Robin Russo, 90 Fleet Street. I agree with Petra. Please look more closely at McNabb's project. I call him the Irish curse of Portsmouth because he is single-handedly ruining our historical district. I've sat at Series Bakery having lunch, listening to tourists laugh at his, what I call the Miami Vice building on Daniel Street. And he needs to somebody needs to control this because it is out of control. And our property values are high because we have a wonderful historical district. People come from all over the world to see our buildings and to relive history here, and he's ruining it. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because of the emergency snow ban. I saw it in the packet for the city council, and there's so many problems with this. I've sat in many citywide neighborhood committee group meetings where we met with city councilors and city management and told them our thoughts regarding the emergency snow ban procedures, and they have completely ignored us. So I'm asking this committee to kick it back to the citywide neighborhood group for recommendations. There are elderly residents in downtown Portsmouth. It affects a lot of downtown residents. When they call the ban is a problem, when it's very dark, and sometimes when it starts snowing, and elderly or handicapped people cannot navigate the streets. When they call off the snow ban at 8 o'clock in the morning, get it out of the parking garage in 2 hours, that's not needed. Especially elderly people usually call somebody, a friend, can you drive me to the garage? Because they can't navigate those streets with ice and snowbanks and everything else. So they call a friend, come pick me up, drive me to the garage, and then follow me, and I'll put my car in another space in town. And because it's messy, their friends have to drive them home. So there's a lot of considerations here that have not been addressed, including what a designee from the city, a city employee has the ability or the power to call an emergency snow ban. An emergency snow ban has a very, it weighs heavily on our budget. And currently the police chief and the head of DPW, Peter Rice, are the ones that make that decision for an emergency snow ban, and rightfully so. They are the most experienced, they're leaders of our community, and they own the budgets. And they know what is appropriate or not for a snow ban, not some rogue designee employee of the city of Portsmouth. So please think about that. Also we always had a 3-inch rule before we called a snow ban, and now a 2-inch rule. 3 inch is very reasonable. 2-inch weighs on our city budget. Last season, we have a very mild snow season, and I live on the corner of Fleet and Congress, and I'm noticing, why are we plowing at the end of the season when there's absolutely nothing on the street? Overtime pay. Yeah, that affects your tax dollars, yours and mine, and I hope we look very carefully at this, but if you kick it back to the citywide neighborhood group, we can come up with a list of what we think that should look like based on our needs, the people of this community. What I've heard so far from people making public comments today is that you're not taking them into consideration in your decision-making process or your policy or ordinance changes. So it's time to listen to the residents of Portsmouth instead of just doing what you think is right. We have spent a lot of time thinking about this, so please kick it back to the citywide neighborhood group. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. And do we have another hand on Zoom?
Justin Richardson.
Go ahead, Justin.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking my comments today. I just wanted to talk about Woodbury Avenue. Unfortunately, I can't stay on for the whole meeting, but I will go back and watch the video later when you do your update. I wanted to recommend, and I saw a comment, I believe it was on social media, that the current measures that the city have are only about $8,000 and change in order to implement. And I've been watching the project on Woodbury closely, and what I've noticed is that we really can't look at the effectiveness of the project without putting together all of the locations at which measures are proposed. Right now, we're seeing isolated slowdowns, but people know there's only one, so they speed right back up, and so we can't really see how well the project works. I know a lot of neighborhoods need these things and want them, so I'd really encourage this committee to work with the city council to get more of these, and also get ones of different heights, because I'm hearing from other residents, hearing from some of my kids, that older vehicles don't handle the current height very well. It has a greater impact on people with old cars than with new ones, and I don't think that's a good thing. I think that more of these measures as is proposed, and with different heights that we could experiment with, may work in different situations. So that's really all my comment is. I look forward to watching the video and watching this project move forward. I don't know how to turn my comments off, but thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Do we have any Zooms? All right. With that, I'll close the public hearing, and we'll move on to presentations. And we have the High Street, Ladd, and Haven Court proposed street improvements by developer 1 Congress Street by Ambit Engineering.
Can I make a comment on this presentation? I think we should have had a site walk prior to this presentation, and it was in the letter from Ambit that was written, I think, the 28th of August. So I would be more comfortable with a committee-specific site walk before we look into making decisions on this presentation.
Okay, thank you. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, John Chagnon from Ambit Engineering, Haley Ward. Here today is Mark McNabb, the developer, and Marie Bodie from the McNabb Group. I did bring the handouts. I'm not sure if you want some of the material handed out that way, or if you have it, I'm sure you have it digitally. So thank you for the opportunity. Mr. McNabb did do a site development project that went through all of the city staff and board reviews for the redevelopment of the rear portion of 1 Congress Street, what we're calling the 1 Congress Street property, the corner of Congress and High Street. Currently, the property has buildings that occupy the corner. There's some other newer wood frame building additions in the back, and then there's a surface parking lot, which is now dedicated to private parking, paper parking. It did support the prior uses of the buildings on the lot. The plan is to construct a new building that would remove some of those additions in the back and complete the block out to Haven Court. That did go through a process of approvals, including the Technical Advisory Committee, and one of the things that came out of that process was, just to address an earlier comment, making the High Street safer for fire apparatus to go down the street. So currently it's constricted with small lanes, curbs, and parking. So the proposal is to remove the curbs and lower the streetscape so that it is all one elevation. The lanes and the demarcations that will be accomplished with surface treatments, so there will be different surface treatments to highlight the sidewalk and the travel lane. But the bottom line is that that's all one plane, and whether it's 9 feet, 10 feet, etc., those details need to be flushed out and worked on to get the final numbers. But in general, the developer wants to put in wider sidewalks on either side, make it more appealing for people to walk down that street, and also provide a fully operational one-way lane that would accommodate both the vehicles that use it and the fire apparatus that might need to go down there. In addition, if you look at the first page of the submission, going back up, this is just the cover sheet. We can go to the next page. Thank you. That shows the project area. So the developer is willing to make some improvements also, not only in High Street, but in Ladd Street and Haven Court. So I think a site walk would be very useful. We're open to having you folks come down anytime. There have been some site walks which some people have attended, but we'd be glad to do it again. Currently, when you come down Commercial Alley to the east of Market Street, it's a very beautiful pedestrian corridor.
and you get to Market Street, and then you're kind of faced with going right or left. It's not very appealing to go forward and continue on to Ladd Street. So one of the ideas of this project is to bring pedestrians down that street. The other end is Haven Court, which goes to Fleet Street. Currently, it's blocked off. There is a famous restaurant at the intersection called Gillies, but behind that, it's very unappealing and not utilized. So part of the push here is to make some connectivities that don't exist. And if you go to the next slide, you can see the general the general idea here. So you have, from the McIntyre building on the right, you have that commercial alley, and then the idea would be to continue that lovely pedestrian connection down Ladd Street, down by the parking garage on Haven Court, out to Fleet Street. There is a possibility someday there is a corridor behind the Pierce block that may provide even more of a connection. But that's the general idea, is to enliven this corridor, make it more friendly to pedestrians, and in the long run that will provide more of the feeling and commercial viability of downtown Portsmouth. Do you want to jump in?
Hi, Mark McNabb. I just want to address some of the incorrect information that we've heard, just so that everybody has the right information. Our plan never, ever has involved a two-way street. Not sure where that came from. Maybe it came from possibly that during construction, when we have to close the street for underground utilities, we said our plan would be to make one two-way so that you could get to the High Hanover Garage. That's the only time I could think of. But I want to be clear, our plans have never made High or Ladd change the travel ways. Always the one-way streets, the exact way you go now. Second part is we pulled away from, we do not have a trash room in the parking garage. That is not part of this. Closing the garage is not part of this. It is actually, it's also incorrect that the sidewalks are ADA. ADA require 5 feet wide. They are not 5 feet wide, and I am an engineer. They're 3 feet. You can't be 5 feet and go to 3 feet. So it doesn't mean like if the throat out at Congress is 5. They have to be 5 feet wide all the way down, unobstructed. Those sidewalks are not down Ladd or High Street. So I'll try to separate opinion from fact. The fact is there are no sidewalks down Ladd Street or High Street that are handicap accessible. And I suggest if anybody thinks that's different, I'll pay for you hiring your own engineer to take that measurement. So that'll just take off the table my opinion versus other people's opinion. But I am representing there are no handicap accessible sidewalks down High Street or Ladd now. And this plan makes them handicap accessible. The travel way for the fire department is 18 feet down High Street. The buildings are 30 feet to 30 feet. Sidewalks 5 feet on each side is 10. 18 is 28. You have 2 feet left for parking. I want the parking committee to clearly know that when those spaces were shoehorned in there, those parking spaces, probably prior, well, it was prior, because I was here then, prior to the Americans with Disability Act, which is 1991. Prior to 1991, you could do whatever you wanted. Those spaces are existed prior to 91. Today, though, you don't have handicap spaces. You don't have a proper travel lane down High Street for the fire department. So this plan makes them handicap accessible, which they are not today. And you just don't fit parking spaces. If you put parking spaces there, then you got to say the sidewalks, you're willing to not have them 5 feet, or you're willing to tell the fire department that they don't have 18 feet, something less. So I don't want that to be an issue with me. I want that to be an issue with the city and the city's regulations. So I just wanted to correct those. We're not changing the travel ways. You go down High Street the same way after this project as before. There is an opinion that I'll sell more condos or whatever. I can tell you from me, because nobody can speak for me, I'll tell you from me, that has nothing to do with my plan. Nobody will know what these streets would look like after I build a building if these streets don't happen this way. Downtown Portsmouth doesn't happen. You put up a new building, and you say, oh, wow, I wouldn't pay you more because it didn't look like this. I'm genuine when I say that I would like to see these streets improved for the public, that's handicap accessible. So I just wanted to address that, those points that are fact versus opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
So continuing, just to get through the set that you have as evidence here, the next sheet shows a site plan. So in this, we've just added the building at the rear of 1 Congress, which was approved through the site plan approval process. We've layered that in, and then we're starting to look at some design elements, and again, providing the wider conforming sidewalks, the change in the surface features which identify the travelway and the sidewalk, and going up to Haven Court. There's a set of stairs way on the west side, on the left side, that would replace that sort of awkwardly steep section that you'll see in the site walk. And then the next page is a little more detail of the landscape architect's vision for the features of the street view. This is a sort of an area of differently colored but suitable surface treatments, and it invites people to sort of meander down Haven Court to the left of the intersection. The large circle is in the intersection of Haven, Ladd, and High Street. And I think that is the last sheet in the set. And again, going back to the site plan sheet, which I think is one, you can, oh, yeah, right, oh, going back, go down 3 now, 1, 2, 3. So if you look closely, though, you will see the existing parking spaces are shown and how they sort of protrude into this reconfigured sidewalk travelway. I guess that's it, unless you have anything else.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. Before I go to questions, we did have competing site walks before this meeting, and I thought the Pickering Lane one was more important because that was happening more urgently, and there wasn't enough time to have 2 site walks. But I also think it's beneficial for us to have this discussion, the initial discussion, since it's a fairly complicated, unusual one, you know, here where it's all recorded versus out on the side of the street where there's a lot of side conversations and everything. So I think kicking the ball off here in the meeting room is probably advantageous. That being said, if we hadn't had a conflicting site walk, we probably would have done it first. So does anybody have any questions for the presenters? Mary Lou?
Yes, I think this is under our jurisdiction as a committee, traffic safety. Has a traffic impact study been done that would include, from start to finish, how it would impact the downtown while this construction is being done?
So that's 2 questions, I think, or 1 question. What you're saying is, has anybody done a traffic impact analysis of what it would be like during construction of this project?
That's right.
That's what you're asking.
How it would affect downtown Portsmouth during this construction?
Sure. So as you know,
Congress Street specifically.
Congress Street. Yeah. So as you know, construction is occurring in the city in various places, and yes, there are impacts to sidewalks and lanes, and the city does a great job managing that to the best of their abilities, given the need to construct facilities that have been approved. I think that Congress Street, if people come down Congress Street and they find that High Street is not passable during the limited times that they will need to close it to do full construction of utilities and other things, that they can continue down Congress Street, and they will just go to their destination in different ways. I guess by the look of your face, I'm not answering your question.
So a
but
traffic impact study has not been done.
Peter, is
of
that
how that would.
Is that normally planning board, or do we do traffic studies here in PTS?
Isn't that part of our purveyance as traffic safety?
So the thing you need to look at is traffic impact studies are done for the reconfiguration of a project, not for the transient impacts associated with construction. So we do the evaluation of that, but it's not a traffic impact study. It's more of a, how's the construction going to be handled, where the vehicle's going to be parking, how are the things going to be moving through there. So we do look at that as part of the CMMP process, which is the Construction Management Mitigation Plan that gets approved by, really all the people that are involved with the TAC committee. So it's not, you don't see projects come through. You see the project do an traffic impact study on the project as it's built, in terms of the volume of traffic that's generated associated with that the new function or the new use of that site, but not in the transient typically. I mean, Eric, do you want to add anything more to that, or modify what I'm saying if I'm speaking
what
incorrectly?
Peter's saying is correct. The traffic impact study is done for the final configuration of the site once all the construction is done. During construction, that's handled during the construction mitigation management process, the CMMP plan that Peter referred to. And that's an active project. I mean, that's a process that involves all city staff and departments and how to handle that. We're going to be discussing the Deer Street issue later on in the agenda. But construction is always handled differently. Traffic impact studies are done for the final configuration of the site.
I think it's probably worth noting that the traffic configuration isn't changing.
What?
The traffic configuration isn't changing. It's remaining exactly the same.
I'm talking about during construction.
Right, but that's not our
Mr.
purview.
McNabb
That's
had
a CMMP type thing and TAC thing. That's
Okay.
not PTS.
Well, you know how many complaints came in for Penn Hollow and Daniel.
Yes, but that's
So,
not
how
our committee.
can we
That would
prevent
go
this
to the
from
council.
happening? I'm looking at the impact.
Right, Mary Lou, but that's not this committee. We have a big agenda. We have
So
to
we're
focus on
traffic
this stuff.
safety.
Right, but
Mary Lou-
we're talking about parking. We're talking about safety. We're not talking about construction management.
talking
That's
about
TAC
traffic
and
safety.
planning board.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Impacts associated with the construction are part of construction. It is very disturbing to folks. It is very difficult. We understand that. But the nature of construction in and of itself is disruptive. You can't eliminate that. You do your best to mitigate it. You do your best to make sure that vehicles can get through during the times. The emergency vehicles can have access at all times. But it is not something that it happens.
And this is going to happen regardless because everything's been approved. So it's either going to happen with the improvements or it's going to happen without the improvements. But we're not talking about whether or not it should
Okay,
happen.
I've got my answer.
Steve?
So I just want to clarify that there's the project, which has been approved by the planning board,
That's
which
correct.
is not our domain at all. There's the construction of the project, mitigation of which is not our domain at all.
That's correct.
What the council has asked us to do is to provide comment on the developer's offer to do streetscape changes.
I would even, I'm sorry if I may, I would even go further. It's very specific. It is the parking impact. Right. The streetscape is in the purview of the Department of Public Works in terms of, the approval of that stuff. So, the question really is it acceptable to the committee to lose, 5 parking spaces?
That's right. So thank you. That's what I was hoping we'd get to. So we just all focus on that issue.
Yes.
And then I have a question when the time is appropriate for that.
Go for it.
So I've reviewed all the materials and I've followed this closely. Is the request for comment from this committee on removal of the 5 public parking spaces? Or is there some wiggle room? I look at the Chestnut Street model, which has been brought up, that this is replicating a style that's on Chestnut Street, which I think most people would say works pretty well, and has what it does is provide flexibility for those events that require loading, unloading, special, it can be accommodated easily. So in my mind, I get a little nervous when the question we're being asked is removal of 5 parking spaces. I mean, it is a removal of 5 parking spaces as they exist, but the flexible streetscape there would allow for special needs parking and event parking and loading, unloading with approval by the city. Is that not correct?
Yeah, so I could maybe add some clarity. So there's 9 of us on the council, and I think we all have a different opinion on what the council's asking PTS to do. So I can't tell you what the council's really asking for because we all had a different opinion. We did approve the developer's plan in concept, and the developer's plan required the removal of the parking spots.
Yep.
That being said, we don't give up the rights that in 5 years, if we wanted to, we could add the parking spots.
That was going to be my next question.
The
Permanency.
question I think this committee probably needs to address, that is, if they want to kind of follow the will of the council, that's most significant, is 3 of these parking spaces are 15-minute spaces, which are 4 15-minute spaces heavily utilized, but from a revenue standpoint are not, we don't generate a lot of revenue there compared to the 2 parking spaces that are permanent parking spaces. So a question that this committee might want to entertain is, do we propose removing 5 spaces, or do we propose removing 5 spaces and reallocating 15-minute spaces elsewhere? But, I mean, everything's on the table, but I think that would be something that we should consider.
Mr. Chairman, if we could, I'd like to just focus on the presentation and the questions associated with that instead of more general, because I really, have you looked at shared street concepts that include parking? Because I've gone to many communities that have shared streets with on-street parking, and they work perfectly well. They provide the additional space for emergency vehicles. The pedestrians are dominant. They walk in the center of the street. The street's configured in such a way. Have you looked at that, and have you seen if that shared model works?
Pete, thanks for the question, and I know where you're coming from. I first want to make sure that we also state that we're creating a loading zone that doesn't exist today on Ladd Street in our plan. Right now there's a cast iron street light. It's outside that big area. And like we do on Bow Street, I would recommend and encourage the traffic committee here to have that loading zone convert to parking spaces after certain hours like they do in the other ones. So I wanted to make sure that we all understood that we're not taking away a loading zone. We're adding a loading zone, and that loading zone, I think, should be parking like the other loading zones are after a certain hour and before a certain hour and overnight, in which case that would be 3 parking spaces that don't exist today. As far as shared use in here, Pete's question is a very good one and very reasonable. It's a very reasonable approach. We don't want to see that use on High Street here if it was a broader request than like all of Market Square, for example, shared use in a large area. I think it's a really great one. We see it all around the world. We see, shared parking, and then bollards come up, and then it's pedestrians, and it spills out. It's generally not haphazard, though. It's generally not 3 spaces here or 5 spaces there. It's generally done in a study. The city has hired or is in the process of hiring somebody to study all of Market Square. So, Pete, respectively, I would encourage you to include that as part of the Market Square study and a broader area. My plan does not have perpetuity. This is city land. I don't own it. I'm hoping that people will, if they approve this plan and go forward, that they wouldn't then turn around 6 months later after I'm done and put the parking back in. But I want this committee to know you can do that. There are no strings attached to this. This is city land. It's not my land. It's public land. My plan exists that I'm willing to do this plan you see and deliver this plan through completion, through the CMMP process, through acceptance, After acceptance, after this is done, certificate of occupancy given, my bond released, the city says you've done exactly what you've agreed to do. There's no string attached going forward. If your Market Square study comes in and that you want parking all the way down High Street at 5 years from now, you can do that. I hope it doesn't happen. I will be very vocal on eliminating extensive parking in the downtown, not 5 spaces. We have struggled on our 400-year-old city, just struggled with placing private property everywhere on parking spaces. We don't have trash, we don't have recycling, we don't have transformers. We have sidewalks all over that aren't ADA for parking private property. I think that this isn't really an issue of taking spaces away when spaces, for crying out loud, take both sides of every freaking street downtown. I view it much different than I'm hearing these sacred spaces. I travel all over, and they return so much more after, than just automobiles and parking automobiles, historic cities. And so I encourage you to eliminate these 5 spaces. I encourage the committee to think about that going forward, about eliminating far more spaces than this so that we can deal with our trash downtown. We don't have land. So no, I wouldn't want to see a shared on High Street, Pete, on that, for my plan.
Erica?
Can I ask you for some clarification, and then depending on that answer, that changes. Is our question, you said something that, is our choice between eliminating 5 spaces or eliminating 5 spaces and reallocating others as 15-minute, or not? Like, is one of our options, no, we think there needs to continue to be parking here?
Yeah, so, the PTS can choose to do whatever it likes to do. And then when the council accepts the action sheet, that kind of becomes part of the omnibus, and for the next up to a year, that goes into place before we change it with a formal ordinance. What I'd like to avoid, though, is the PTS saying that we want to do this, and the council then rejecting what the PTS says. So I think if we can come to something that seems to fit what the request is and is acceptable to this committee, that would be ideal. Doesn't mean that we will do that, but that would be what I'd like to see us do.
And City Council has accepted this plan in large concept, but it's the details that we need to work out?
Yeah, I think the council, for 2 reasons, as I understood it, I made the reference to PTS. The reason I wanted to refer it to PTS is I didn't want to eliminate 5 parking spaces, 3 of which were 15-minute, and then just lose those 15-minute spaces without at least, generally I'm opposed to 15-minute spaces. I think I've made that clear. However, in this case, getting rid of 3 of them might be a bit extreme. So I think we should have the conversation and maybe recover some of those.
Okay.
That would be my hope. But that's kind of why we're here. We're here to kind of talk it all out. It's a big change to the downtown. I tend to agree with Mr. McNabb, and I hear a lot as a counselor that why don't we shut down Congress Street? Why do we have traffic on Congress Street? It should be like Burlington. It should be a pedestrian mall. Well, I see this as a chance to leave Congress Street more or less largely alone and create an adjacent pedestrian mall at the cost of far fewer spaces.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, just a sort of clarification so that everybody here on the committee hears it from me. I think for the developer, I think he would probably agree, but by and large, these spots were eliminated because of my representative on the TAC committee looking for access points. And that's also why the sidewalks were lowered as well, is because that was part of what we were looking for at TAC. And again, some of the things that didn't come up here tonight, but we also were looking for some more lighting down in that neck of the woods that came out of this project as well. So while we're talking about, there may be some reluctance to, eliminate these parking spots, let me be absolutely crystal clear. The fire department's looking to see those spots disappear from where they sit currently.
Thank you.
Steve?
I definitely think we should have a site walk so we can go through these issues. I definitely think there's a path forward that's a middle path here. And I just want to respond to, in the public comment period, someone said, there's no problem here. What is the problem? The committee's here to fix problems. Sometimes we're here to look at opportunities to improve safety, to improve traffic and mobility. It's not just about fixing a problem. So I'd like to get out on the site as a group and walk through some of these questions, but I see a lot of potential here where this could be a positive in terms of traffic safety, parking, and mobility to our city.
Okay, and can we keep it to the questions to developers? I know I've been bad at that as well. Did you want to go, Mark?
You said keep it questions to developers. I just got a comment.
Okay, well, wait.
Just like everybody else.
Erica?
How many spaces are in the lot that is being replaced, built over?
18.
20, 18.
You lost me. What lot?
The Rosa lot.
The lot.
Not the Rosa lot,
Rudy's.
the,
There are going to be,
Corner right now is a parking lot with
there will,
18 spots.
18
there will be spaces created for the development at a lower level. So
Okay,
the
how many
developer-
spaces? That was my next question.
23, I believe. So we're 18 parking lot now. We're putting 23 under the building.
Okay. There's been some comparison made to Chestnut Street. Have you guys done counts on High Street versus Chestnut Street in terms of pedestrian activity or vehicular activity and geometrics? Like how wide is Chestnut versus this?
Well, we haven't, I'm deeply involved with Chestnut. I'm the one who donated the land for the granite benches. I actually started that process. I own the block there by the music hall. The music hall is much different than High Street. What happens there at the music hall, it's community venue, the events that they have that want to spill out. It's like a Prescott Park. It's like a Strawberry Bank. It's an entirely different venue. High Street is primarily office on the one side. My building will have a few retail spaces. So, I think Chestnut functions really well for what Chestnut does. And I think Chestnut, and I support what I'm going to say right now, because we actually did a period of a year or 6 months study of closing Chestnut. We closed it off, and it didn't really work well. And I actually favored closing it, and then I backed up and said I favor not closing it, because it didn't really quite work well. So Chestnut, I think, is so important with the music hall, an 800-seat music hall there, that, boy, to understand their function and their needs for dropping off handicapped people and the activity there, I think what happens on Chestnut's appropriate. I just don't think a study of Chestnut applies to High Street and what we're looking to do here.
I'm curious, well, have you done counts on High Street in terms of vehicles and pedestrians using the road now?
Well, we had to do a traffic study for our project because we're not changing any we're not changing any volume of streets. I certainly have looked at pedestrians spilling over the sidewalks because of the amount of people that walk out of the High Hanover Garage. That I've looked at. The amount of, I call it traffic calming. The more spaces you put everywhere, and the more you cram stuff into narrow sidewalks, it's really chaotic. You need a common area down, but get rid of cars in these narrow areas. So from a pedestrian standpoint, I know it doesn't work. From a car standpoint, we're not changing, travel ways. And I would like to say it's pretty common sense. It'll actually improve that because when you have 5 parking spaces, people stop traffic. They're parallel spaces. Stop traffic, they back into it. So without those spaces there, you're going to get cars from point A to point B much faster, much better than having parallel spaces that block the travel way. So no, we have not studied that, but I know I want to calm the street down, and that's why it was important to me in my plan to get rid of those parking spaces for that street and calm it down. It is so disruptive seeing cars parallel park and stop traffic. We don't talk enough about that, but it's just chaos.
But calms traffic.
Huh?
But calms traffic.
I'd like to not see that. I'd like to not see that in High Street.
Any other questions for the presenting team? All right, thank you guys very much. And now we'll open it up. Thank you. I'll start with you, Mark, because you said you had a comment.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
We're out of order.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd move to, if we want to take this up, I
think we should
bring forward 6B ahead of, so we can have a concurrent conversation. Second, how many seconds?
Second.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so I'll start with the questions with you, Mark.
Questions? I'm ready to
Comment?
I'm going to make a motion.
Okay.
All right, motion to remove 5 parking spots in concept. And the key words in concept. If I can get a second, then I can explain.
Second.
I'll second for discussion. Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
All right, the city council voted on this, right, in concept. So basically, we're taking this and saying we're open to it. We're open to removing, but then we're just open to the idea. There's still negotiations going on between Mr. McNabb and the city, and those are ongoing. I don't think we should be making any definitive decisions here today. We can't, because the city said in concept. Our thought is in concept. Sure, we're open-minded to it. Now, I'm fiscally conservative. I love meter parking. We're a tourist town. I like the revenue, but we're going to lose that revenue. But I'm also looking at the good of the whole project in concept right now, today. The other point is that walkability, vibrancy. I've been listening to that for 20 years. I'm at a residence for 50 years. We're going in that direction. And so if you look at the bigger picture, in concept, it's like, I can't say yes and I can't say no. I just need to hear more.
So, if I may.
Yep.
So, I guess I'm a little, so what your motion is to further the review of the removal of the parking. You know, we'll do the site visit, we'll have further discussion, seeing if if the displaced parking can get adjusted.
I'll accept a friendly amendment based on staff, if you want to add that on.
Yeah, I'd just like to maybe
go the reverse.
Say that, we think this is a really interesting suggestion. We think there's some benefits to it. We want to make sure we mitigate the negatives associated with this.
Good.
So I think a site visit is a great idea. I think the fact that the proposed project adjusts where the loading zone is to around the corner, and then those spaces would be available off, the off delivery time hours. So there's an offset of loss of spaces, at least 2 spaces, and there's the possibility of relocating the 15-minute spaces into Market Square without a major impact. And I know, so I think it'd be a good opportunity to have further discussion on this. So I guess the motion would be to
Continue to discuss?
In concept with a sidewalk?
We'll do the sidewalk, and then we're going to come back and we're going to have further discussion. And one point of clarification, the council can't do a single vote to eliminate parking spaces. It's an ordinance-driven thing. It has to have three readings, public hearing. So just because it's a vote doesn't mean that actually eliminates the parking spaces.
And I think further to Mark's point, and maybe have Director Fletcher speak to this, but the revenue of these 5 parking spaces, I believe, and I may be misunderstanding the spreadsheet, but it was about $17,400 a year, give or take. So these are relatively low numbers. If they weren't 15-minute parking spaces, the numbers would be much higher. 15-minute parking spaces don't generate as much revenue. So the revenue loss of $17,400 a year versus the proposed improvement costs, we actually, I think, over a pretty significant number of years, we would come out ahead financially as a city in this particular case, if that helps you with the revenue loss
my
component.
understanding is, going back 50 years since I was a kid, I've been living here, and Peter can go back in his career, 15-minute parking has always been a topic. They've come and gone. The city's like, okay, we have 15-minute parking, then we're going to take it away. Then we add it, then we take it away. So that's flexible. It's always been flexible.
Yeah.
It's consistently, historically flexible. So that's why I said in concept. So I think in formality purposes, do I withdraw my motion, or what do you guys want to do?
I want to work on Peter's amendment. Is that an amendment to this?
Is that a friendly amendment, or is that a vote?
I think we could
vote on no on mine, and then go to yours?
Or we could both say we withdraw.
And start fresh.
The original motion.
That might be easiest.
And then we reissue a new motion.
Why don't we rescind the
I'm
motion?
willing to.
Okay, we just did that. Let's take a roll call. Go ahead.
No, if you rescind it, we can just make a
I
new
just
one.
rescinded it.
So I
Peter
would
rescinded it.
I would make a motion to have a site walk to further discuss the pros and cons of this potential modification to this parking.
Good. I'll second that.
Yeah, well, we need a vote.
No,
then we discuss it.
We both withdrew our.
We rescinded them.
Yeah, so now we're on, the table's open for
moving
discussion.
forward.
I think the next point of discussion, this is a confusing one for us, is we should make the assumption if we're going to get rid of the 5 parking spaces, do we want to do more 15-minute spaces? And if we're not going to get rid of the 5 parking spaces, I guess that question would be mute. So I guess I would open the floor to see what people think about the reallocation of 15-minute spaces.
Are we voting on this first?
I think we're in the discussion time after the motion.
There's a
was
motion
seconded.
on the table.
Right, that we're discussing.
Oh.
Because if we go to the site walk, we're going to want to know, if we don't decide that we're going to move the 15-minute spaces, then on the site walk, we're not going to look for places to put them.
I think we should.
Chair,
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I would suggest that staff take the opportunity to look at where we would, what the modification recommendations we would have, the staff, once they have had a chance to look at it. I think this is a really good opportunity to kind of look at the, what's the function in that area and the inventory. And then, the point that we're going to be revisiting Market Square and the function of Market Square in a larger context is important as well. So I think this is a good opportunity to have further discussion. I don't think we're going to resolve anything at the moment. But I think, once Eric and Ben have had a chance to look at the available spaces and what potential options there are, I think that'll better inform everybody for discussion.
Okay. So Eric and then Mark.
So
I agree with what Peter said, and I guess I feel like I think we should keep the idea of moving 15 minutes, finding new ones. I'm not sure how to say that. I got lost in my head. On the table until we know that we don't. If we're going to evaluate options, then I think that should be something we look at. I don't come in with an opinion about whether we should move them or get rid of them, but if we're going to bother doing a site walk, I think it's worth looking at where they might go so that we can think about what are the trade-offs of doing that. I mean, I think it's better for us to have that in the bucket of things to look at than to not look at it and later be like, why didn't we look at that?
Yeah.
And I will add, one of the reasons I wanted to put the 15-minute spaces on the table is I did receive some emails, and some people say I use it all the time to go to Bennett's, or I use it all the time to go to popovers. So in my mind, I associate those 15-minute spaces, rightly or wrongly, with Starbucks. But I'm hearing from residents they use those 15-minute spaces and then walk somewhere else. So the assumption may be to keep them as close to where they are currently, but it may make sense to move them, 100 feet or 200 feet in either direction as well. And I want the public to have a chance to opine on that as well.
Yeah.
Leah, what's the motion? Can you read it back to us? 'Cause that's why I'm calling upon you. You have that look like you're not sure about.
Well, it was a little bit confusing. I believe Peter made a motion to do a site walk and then further evaluate the parking situation.
That's the motion.
Including the potential to move 15, well, that's within the evaluation.
Could I just ask that we have that staff review and ideas
That was our
ready
intent.
for the site walk?
That was
Yeah.
the intent.
Thank you.
Have the staff for further evaluation.
Is there any, Erica?
Is the traffic study for this online? I'm curious about the volumes in that area. So if it's not, can you put a copy of the volumes page or something in our packet next time?
Yeah.
Or
It's
if
on,
it's
it's on
online.
the site review portion of the website, isn't it?
Yeah, the viewpoint, the portal. I know it's on there because it came before TAC and Planning Board.
Okay.
It's on what?
It's what we call it, the viewpoint portal. It's where all the applications, all the permitting is done online.
So it's somewhere in that
Website?
list
In
of.
there, yeah. I just don't know how you.
For one Congress?
Yeah.
It's also posted for tax, so I can send a link to it directly.
Great.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to
Appreciate
have
that.
it in the packet because there's a lot of information in there. It would take us a while to find it, I think.
Thank you.
The other point I'll make is because the area from Gillies up is now currently pedestrian traffic is prohibited, and to be frank, the area once you get past there is not as inviting as it might be compared to other parts of the city. I don't know that pedestrian numbers are
Yeah.
predictive of what it might be if it was a nicer area,
I
but I
totally
think traffic
agree.
numbers might be useful.
I think it's just good to have perspective.
You're not going to find pedestrian
Okay,
numbers.
so those weren't counted anyway. Okay.
You didn't count.
But the idea here is
Pedestrians?
to wholly increase the pedestrian numbers at the end of the day. But they're not The report didn't have pedestrian numbers. It wasn't part of the study.
Okay.
Okay.
Typically is not
That-
part of the traffic analysis.
I think, are we, or did you have one more, Mary Lou?
We're going to take a vote?
Yeah, unless there's more discussion.
We're ready.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. And then we'll.
Going to set that sidewalk
Do
time
we,
up,
do we need to set that now, or? I guess you guys need to produce the data, and then we can set the sidewalk?
Yeah, unless we want it, I mean, we could.
Break time?
We've collected some, we're in the process of getting more.
Is the default the Tuesday before our next meeting?
Typically for a meeting, but I mean, it could be
That
whatever
could
the
be
committee
separate.
wants to do.
Sooner, maybe?
Sooner might be better if we have another competing sidewalk.
Sooner in terms of what's best for the council, what they're looking for
Can't vote though
feedback.
Right.
until we meet again, so it doesn't really matter.
That's true.
Would next Thursday, the 14th, work?
No.
No?
Maybe first thing. Not first thing, 8:15.
14th.
It's Thursday, the 14th.
Or Tuesday's better?
I can do Thursday, the 14th. I have to be done by like
Yeah.
9, I think, though.
Can we
8:15 to 9.
We usually set sidewalks at 8 a.m.
Can we do 8:15?
Yeah. Can you do Friday, the 15th?
Yeah, later in the week.
Friday, the 15th, I maybe can do the morning of the 15th.
Can I just interject?
Yes.
Mark is going to be out of the country. I'm happy to fill in for him, but I cannot do Friday the 15th.
Okay.
I could do Thursday the 14th.
Okay.
All right, let's do Thursday.
Did you say you could or couldn't, Erica?
I can do Thursday, the 14th, before 9, but it'd be great if we didn't start till 8:15.
Okay.
I'm out on the 14th.
Next week's really
Okay.
booked up already for me, so.
You're familiar with that.
exactly.
Can we,
Steve can't
do you
do
wanna-
the, wait, guys.
next week is, I'm
Not
booked
great.
Thursday, Fridays, Tuesdays, it's already booked
All right,
up.
why don't we, after the meeting, we'll do a Google poll or
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Good idea.
It's difficult to schedule these things on the fly.
Include her.
It's worth trying, just
Yeah,
in case
we'll
something quick
include
comes together.
the team, but we'll do a poll on when it makes the most sense, but hopefully we can do it sooner than right before the next meeting, because there's the chance that we'll have another site walk competing. And
Good.
okay.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
just-
you, everyone. I
If you want to
appreciate
just
it.
let us know when it is, we'll find people to represent,
Excellent, excellent. All right.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, so now moving on to item A, which we moved, Portwalk Place, request for renewal of valet parking license by business owner. Sample motion, move to approve renewal of valet license agreement with Portwalk High LLC for a term of 1 year. Or sample motion 2, move to approve renewal of valet license agreement for Parade Residence Hotels LLC for a term of 1 year.
Yeah, there's two.
Oh, there's two separate. So I guess we'll start with the sample motion 1, if somebody wants to make
Yeah, I'll
that.
motion to renew the valet license.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And
Motion to move the, approve the renewal of the valet license for the other location.
Second.
Residents.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. C, Mechanic Street, request for additional parking restrictions between Pickering Street and Hunking Street by residents. Sample motion to prohibit parking on Mechanic Street between Hunking Street and Pickering Street.
I'd like to hear from more residents. I mean, the people came today and they came to the site visit, but there's a lot of other butters out there that don't know what we're doing, don't know what's going on.
So I'll make a motion to.
It's a flyer.
To move to prohibit so we can have discussion.
Second.
Go ahead.
All right.
I
So,
think.
Mark, what were you?
No, the thought is that, you know, we have a little bit of a pattern, we're going to have a discussion maybe at the end, is that one person makes a motion, or a advocacy group or a group makes a motion, but it has an impact on people's properties, their everyday lives. And so when the residents showed up, there's only a handful of them.
Mm-hmm.
Some more came today that were different. But there's also people that did not know about the site visit that live there. and they didn't know about our agenda today. So we have, in the past, put out flyers, and I think we should be a little bit more expeditious in doing that in the future. That's just my opinion. Be a little bit more communicative, a little bit more responsible when it comes to, I call it the butters, maybe there's a different word, but that's a sensitive topic down there, parking.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of in favor, but I just want to get more people on those streets, hear from them.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Let me just say something, Peter, because one, this is a safety issue. Since we've enforced the existing policies, people have started parking on the other side of the street, making it difficult for trucks to get through, and fire trucks as well. And two, we're talking about the elimination of, I believe, one parking spot. If we put up the signs, if we were to approve this, it would go as the omnibus to the council to approve it, and it would be approved for up to a year. A lot of times, people aren't going to know that we've made changes until after we make them. After we make these changes, that's when we might, it's possible that we could reverse this after we make the change as well. So I would just put that on the table, because right now
it's
we've
an
created an
emergency.
issue by enforcing the existing ordinances where the parking has become very narrow. Sorry, Peter, would you like to?
Well, no, my
Go ahead.
point was just that, was that what happened was the existing ordinance wasn't being enforced.
Okay.
So the ordinance got enforced, and people didn't like that. The reality is, in this case, what we're moving, what we would do is we'd restrict it further, and then that's in addition, so that'd be an ordinance change. So you're right in terms of making sure that the general public's aware of that.
That's all I'm asking.
The process typically, no matter how hard you try, people say they're not being notified. And it really isn't, as the counselor said, that once you do that's when people realize it, and then they make their voices heard, and the council is responsive to that. Is it best to try to avoid that? Yeah. But I would not, I don't want to set precedent that we're putting flyers out every time we're doing anything, because that is a major labor. We have venues which we reach out to folks. We try to keep people informed. The reason this was brought up today, and Steve Marison came in today, was because he had called and said, he was aware of it, and he was asking for this to be discussed again.
Yeah, I don't want to use this line item here as something we can discuss at the end of the meeting, so based on Pickering, I just, be nice to hear from more people, but you're right, they did come forward, there is a concern, I'm very aware of talking to Esther, et cetera, but there's people don't want to lose parking.
I'd be willing to withdraw my motion to allow another cycle of the meeting to go on, so that more people have the opportunity, because they'll all be talking.
Right.
So they'll have the opportunity for it to percolate a little bit and come back next month. So I'd be willing.
It is the end of the summer, and believe me, I understand the traffic, the 8 weeks down there. I also understand that there's an expansion on Pickering at one time that allowed parking on that side of the street. I understand what Esther's talking about. We talked about her pins and stuff, her lot lines, and then there's, again, let the neighbors still talk.
Yeah.
Before you withdraw your motion, Peter, can we just get to Erica, because she had her hand up?
I just want to clarify a couple things. So all the change that's happened up till now has purely been enforcement of existing ordinance, right?
That's correct.
This is the first thing we're discussing that would be any change to the ordinance.
Correct.
The motivation for this is that people are parking in this currently allowed parking in a way that makes it hard for other vehicles to get through
Yes.
and interact with various space lots. Can we run some trucks through here, or truck turning radii, and see what do we need for a fire truck to get through here? What do we need for a delivery vehicle to get to Geno's? What? I don't know if we need to, maybe we have to get rid of all these spaces, maybe we don't. I guess it's part of the idea of talking about it more, but I just feel I don't want it. I'm looking, there's an awful lot of red there. There's not a lot of allowable parking. I think the parking along the water up to the top left is private parking. So, this is a pretty finite resource here, so I think we should just be really thoughtful about what we get rid of.
maybe to put you on the spot, Fire Chief.
No, I'm happy to talk about it. The challenge we have, and Esther spoke earlier. She's right. We bring our new folks down into this neighborhood and hit these streets because the reality is it's very tight, and there's a fair likelihood that somebody hasn't parked properly, and that the truck is buried, and they have to back out of there. And that's part of the training to say, look, you got in, you got stuck. You can always go backwards. But then the problem becomes, right, that while it's useful training, it becomes a bit of a nightmare now, because now you have other cars that have come down Mechanic Street or from some of these streets, right? We got to get them out of the way so we can back the fire truck out of there. Our aerial device, right, just it doesn't fit. It's a truck that's in excess of 50 feet, right? When you consider we have one that overhangs off the back and one that has an overhang off the front, and to be able to figure out how to position right, we'll bring it down there in the event of an emergency and get it as tight as we can and do what we have to do in the event of an emergency. But the reality is that the current situation down there is challenging for us, and I can't sit here and tell you we can get a fire truck down there all the time. I just can't, right? So what we'd like to see, at least for my role as fire chief, is we'd just like to see this situation resolved and enforced so that we know that we can get in down there. Right, and it's not any different in while we talk about the summertime. It's a summertime problem. It's a wintertime problem too, because now you've pushed those cars out a few more inches with snowbanks, right? And it's still a problem for us. So if we can enforce what's going on enforce the current ordinance to make sure that we've prohibited parking in these spots close to the intersection, so that our rigs can make the swing, I'm in favor of it. And our ambulances, right, still have a challenge getting in down there, right? Those are in excess of 8 feet, right, 8 feet wide, and we have challenges when people park down there now. So that's what this is about for where I sit.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm just more concerned about people just knowing what's going on versus saying yes or no and agreeing to something. But I understand his background just because I spent 19 years as a fireman in Newcastle. So, Chief, so what you're saying is Tower 2 and 5 can't go down. It's hard to go down there.
It's
you got a pre-plan. And all your mechanics are training.
Right? Yeah, it's really difficult. And part of it is too, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense to try and bury one of those big trucks down in there, right? Just to prove that we can do it. If we don't need to, right? It's about trying to reduce risk. Like if there's a fire down there, and these cars are illegally parked, they're going to do what they have to do to get the rig in where it needs to be, and they'll scratch up parked cars, bang off of them, whatever they need to do, right? But I don't need to be doing that on a Thursday morning here in September to prove that I can do it, right?
Then once a week. Peter, what does your staff say?
I was thinking electronic
The
turning,
solid
not
waste is
real
really
truck
difficult
turning.
for the trash trucks to get through.
Yeah.
I mean, the change that occurred as a result of where people are now
in the yellow bubble,
right in this area, makes it really tight.
Right.
I mean, it's almost impassable.
Yeah.
I would be in favor that we move forward and listen to the feedback. I think it's a safety issue.
It is.
And I'd rather defer to the side of safety of the ambulance getting through than, somebody being upset about losing one parking space. I think we need to remember the street zone belong to everybody in the city, not just the person who lives there. That's not their parking space necessarily out in front of their house. I know we all kind of think of that space in front of our house as our space, but the reality is the streets belong to everyone. And if there's an issue where ambulances can't get through and garbage trucks can't get through and it's occurring frequently, then I think it's up to us to address that issue. And if there is significant pushback, then to see if there's a compromise that can come from it. But I've been getting quite a few pictures of all the parking and people that can't get through since we've made this change. So I wouldn't want to push it off a whole nother month.
No.
I just have
Mary Lou?
one question. We kind of moved down to South Mill Street when we were in the group.
That's a
That's a
separate
different
item.
topic, though.
I know, but I'm asking, is this all part of the big picture? Are we going to separate that? That's all I'm asking.
Right. Well, I
They're
guess-
separating that off. Can we?
The proposal is just this area right now.
Right,
The next
okay.
additional topic could be that.
Okay, because we moved the discussion, and that's what Esther was referring to. So I think we need to go with this
Yeah.
today. Make that a separate
Steve?
No.
I know you
We have
don't
a
like to get
motion
rid
on
of
the
parking.
floor? No.
Yeah. So, is there any further discussion?
No.
All right, so the motion on the floor is to remove the parking. All those in favor? Sorry.
But that was a general motion. It really should be specified one side or the other,
Yeah.
or both sides.
So, do we need to restate the motion then, or? I think we are intending to remove parking on the land side, the non-water side of Mechanic Street between Pickering and Hunking.
Across the street
On
from
this
Gino's.
side. Along here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prohibit parking, not remove, excuse me, prohibit parking.
Mark? Or would you have a second?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Second.
Okay.
Yeah, Peter, I got a question. See that? I don't have a big stick. See where it says Mechanic Street, see where the T is? Go below there. You can put some paint there sooner than later, right? It says no parking?
That's already painted as no parking.
Oh, that's painted.
Yep.
Okay. Do we have the motion? Or do we have?
Well, we have two motions.
Oh, we never rescinded.
Well, the first motion I thought was to do just what was clarified by saying it was on the land side.
That was then the.
All right, so let's start over. I'm going to rescind, and then we had the motion prior to rescind. Can that motion be removed so we can start clean?
I'm more than willing to remove my initial motion to remotion.
So we'll rescind both
So
motions.
now we have no motions on the floor.
Poor Robert's Rules of Order is rolling over in his grave right now. And then, Steve, would you like to remake the motion?
So I would like to make a motion that the city prohibit parking on Mechanic Street on the land side of the street between Hunking and Pickering Street.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on. D, snow emergency parking ban. Request the ordinance updates by DPW. Sample motion is move to approve recommended changes to Chapter 7 sections as presented. If I get a motion in a second, we can have a discussion.
So moved.
A second.
Okay. Erica, I see your.
Can Peter kind of provide a summary in words of what these changes are? I read through, I'm not sure what the motivation is and
so
functional changes.
It really, and Ben can speak up to the adjustments. It is really just an update in language. There's no, there's references and there's concerns that, the police chief was never involved with snow emergencies. It was always the director of public works. It does not change that. What it does is it adds a designee if I am not available. Say I'm on vacation, say I'm sick, say, whatever. You need somebody to be able to do that work. So that's why it's myself or a designee. The point about the number of inches, it was never 3 inches, it's always been 2 inches. And what we've done is we've created an advance warning process. So prior to doing a parking ban, we give folks an opportunity to get to the parking garages and get off the street way in advance of any emergency snow ban that we would be towing folks. So we do that, and we've added the ability to go into the garage at a reduced rate as a result of when we declare that advanced warning. So we really work hard to address the concerns related to the residents. We've heard a lot of the feedback. One of the biggest feedbacks is this confusion about where to go to get the information, and that's because we've added so many different venues on how to go about doing this. The proposal is to streamline that, to keep the old school hardline phone, we call the snow phone. It is, you dial it up and you get a voice message that says, here's the situation, and you hear Ben. So that is always there. The change that we're going to do on the website and on Channel 22 is to say, interested in snow phone snow-related status, go to the snow phone or sign up for the advanced, the 911 or Smart 911, which will automatically send you to whatever your preference is, whether it's text, email, and so that's a really good venue for people, and I would encourage everybody to sign up for that. It's a great venue. The police use it for other things as well, and it's a good opportunity to get that information pushed right to you. But the long and short of it is, we are trying to make this as clear and understandable so it's not confusing for people. So it's very simple. You got a hardline phone, you call it up, somebody who doesn't have the computer, that doesn't, they don't have a cell phone, they just go up and they call it and they hear what's going on. If they want, they can get the smart 911 pushed out to them, and that's great. So that's the gist of it.
Steve?
All sounds good. Just 2 inches is, I mean, that's like a flurry. Is that it's to give you discretion.
Yeah. So the reality is, if we say it's going to be a 2-inch storm and it's going to be, typically 2 inches, we call it a burning event. You don't drop a plow for 2 inches. Typically it's some salting. It depends on the conditions, obviously. There's a lot of things that go into decisions relative to how to plow and when to salt. The other thing that this does is it consolidates the loadout process, which is if we accumulate enough snow in certain areas of the city, we have to do what's called a loadout. So that is a specific night event. It's an emergency. It's really parking restrictions for a certain area of the city. Typically, it's the downtown area, a little bit of Austin Street and State Street, but that really is the gist of it. So
I guess a good summation would be just modernizing everything.
You can describe the challenges.
Yeah, and anybody that looks at Chapter 7 and tries to wade through it can see that it's been kind of cobbled together over the years. This is an effort to not only clean up that language, make it more understandable and enforceable, but there's pieces that, like 7102 was loadout only, so we just kind of combined some of that language into 7321, so we don't need 7102 anymore. Part of that cleanup effort, but operationally speaking, the storm determines when a call gets made, and we do our best to not have it be in the middle of the night or in the dinner hour or what have you. But it's always about predicting and being hopeful that we're overcautious, and that's why we have the advanced warning that basically opens the garages at a flat rate very early in the process and gives people the opportunity to make the best decision for themselves and their families as to how they want to handle weathering what's coming. And then again, the smart 911 process automatically sends messaging out via voicemail alerts, text alerts, and email alerts. That's what you sign up for. Or you could look at either. They also mirror to the city's social media accounts, Twitter and Facebook. And of course, we'll still have my lovely snow phone product available for folks that would rather just take a rotary phone and dial me up. So,
and I'm sure there are people who can remember. I've lived in the city long enough when we didn't have all these advanced notices and things like that, and we would literally have our ear to the window when it was snowing and jump out and have to move the car down to the lot. Sometimes you didn't, and you got your car towed, which sucked. That was the game we played.
It's noteworthy that a lot of northern cities simply post permanent signage that says, if it snows and your car is here, it gets removed.
Yeah.
And then they don't have the fancy warnings and the
It's true.
Automatic garage changes and things like that. And as to the 2-hour time limit after the snow ban is concluded, what we discovered was that people would just leave their vehicles in for even days at a time and expect a $3 rate on the way out. So at some point, you've got to restart the garage business as per normal. We decided at some point before my time that 2 hours was a fair amount of time for that. We're actually kind of lenient at the exit points to folks that come at 2 hours and 1 minute kind of thing. So we do take some leeway to try and give people a break that might have had a difficult time coming down. So,
and we've learned a lot too relative to when we removed that snow ban. We try to do it. We try to take a look at all the sidewalks around the area. We've been educated by the residents relative to that. It's never perfect. But we try our best, and it's wintertime, it's disruptive, and we apologize in advance.
Yeah, and with loadout events, that's a planned event. You know, it's not an act of God. We know when we're going to do it. So that's why we go out and actually physically post signage to help people understand which streets are going to be closed and when. There's maps available on the website to tell you if your street is Street X, it's in yellow. This is the time frame that they'll be coming through your area to take the sidewalks and clear them into the street, and then run the plow systems down to clear the loaded snow. So, and it depends too. If it gets fairly warm after a storm and it melts away, then loadout's not necessary. So that one is kind of a hit and miss as well, but at least we get to plan it.
All right, with all that said, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And just something unusual here. Could we get a motion to move forward miscellaneous to this point in the meeting? Because we have some people still waiting in the audience that I think would.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So miscellaneous, I believe you guys all got the handout that was passed out this morning. And then basically this has to do with Hillside Drive neighborhood. We did hear about this last week. We were going to wait till school started to get some crossing data information, because the crossing data information didn't really support any changes, but it wasn't during the school season. In the meantime, what's happened is a private property that was used as a cut-through, they've put up a large fence. I believe our legal department is in talks with that private property to see if there might be an accommodation. Whether or not that will happen is unknown. So there's a concern in that neighborhood that we need to take action sooner rather than later. So I'll turn it over to either Eric or Peter. I don't know if there is anything we can do, but I think it's worth having a second discussion.
I've had friends that have lived on Hillside Drive. I've walked to Hillside Drive. I understand the challenges, and that cut through to the ABC properties has always been a relief valve for folks, and it's sad that they've decided to put a fence up, and we understand that there's major impacts. I don't see a quick, immediate solution. The intersection at Greenleaf and Lafayette is something that we've been looking at and trying to figure out how best to address that. We can look at simple, quick solutions, but I'm not seeing, given all the concerns that have been raised, and they're all valid. I'm not disagreeing with them. I don't want the expectation that we're going to be able to implement something that's going to satisfy all these concerns in a very rapid manner. We'll take a look to see what we can implement in the near term. I know there's been requests relative to the rapid flashing beacon in that location. Historically, we haven't seen the volume of pedestrians crossing that area, and that's probably because they had an alternative way to get out.
That's right.
I'm not, I understand and I'm sympathetic, but it's just a matter of, there are concerns, and we know that. It's just that there isn't a quick, simple solution.
Mark?
Crossing guard. You can put a crossing guard there 180 days a year during the school year, because this is more of a concern about the kids. The immediate concern is the safety of the children, right?
So
can you put a crossing guard there, or is that a budget item?
But the children have an alternative way to get to the high school. If you're talking about other schools, I'm not familiar with the kids walking to the grade schools or the middle school from this location. But it doesn't say that there aren't kids doing that.
Peter, can I interject? Is that because they were cutting through the ABC buildings?
Perhaps.
And now they would not be able to do that, so they'd have to pick a new route?
The kids, this has to be studied a little bit. So there's no real, what are ideas from the engineer or from the staff for some immediate relief? Because it seems more of a children's safety issue because they lost their cut through. So what are the kids doing in this past 5-6 days? That's the question.
We take public comment?
We can suspend the rules and allow them to
move to suspend the rules.
I have that question for a parent.
We just need a second and a
Second.
all in favor?
Aye. Could you show the map on the screen?
Yeah.
I also have a local map too. So this was Hillside Drive neighborhood here, the 36 homes. So this is an extension of Hillside Drive,
And then there's property here where the property owner permitted that, and then this is where the cut-through was to here. Sidewalk on Lafayette begins at the entrance to the ABC buildings.
Okay.
So this was the cut-through, and then this fence was erected over Labor Day weekend.
Okay, so the fence isn't at the ABC buildings, it's at a property
No, it's
along the way
on
there.
the
their
ABC building.
property line?
Yeah, so there's a
okay.
home here, and then this is the ABC building.
Have you reached out to the property owner?
We have. Most of us had no idea this was coming.
Yeah.
Apparently, there's been ongoing, it seemed to be mostly dog issues, but I don't know.
Was informed before the meeting by the city manager that our legal department has reached out.
Okay.
But I don't have any other updates other than we've initiated a discussion.
We know that, there's a gentleman who's lived on the street for over 35 years, that people have, kids mostly been cutting through here, but that's what surprised us a little bit on the survey, was we found that the households that responded, again, 28 to 31, about 400 visits per month through that area. So we know that there was a camera over here to evaluate who was using it, and that's why no one was using it.
Right.
It's because nobody feels safe. There's a younger man on the street who's a runner, and he says he doesn't feel safe going across this intersection because the sight line's coming down Lafayette. The speed, I believe, was increased, I don't know when it was, but people are coming fast here, and then also, because this is a faster route, they come fast here and fast down Greenleaf. And so I hear what you're saying, we don't know how you don't do public works and like that, but the speed coming down here, and because of the cones, which I understand what they're there for, but that's making drivers, they don't reduce their speed, they go out into the other lane. And so you have what's supposed to be a 20-mile-an-hour road where the sign for that isn't until about down here. And then you have cars coming down at 35, maybe 40 miles an hour across either one or both lanes coming across. And so, again, I was surprised too at just how many older adults, people my age, people older than me, people younger than me, that they were using this cut through. And there's all kinds of anecdotal stuff. My daughter has an orthodontist up here. Other people have doctors that are up here, and they were walking through. And of course, we can get in our cars and go around, but nobody felt safe crossing Greenleaf up here for certainly, right? And then even here, it doesn't feel safe. And if you want to even get to this spot, if you did have business there, it's cross, up to South Street and cross, because there's no sidewalk here or through here.
So my comment and question was specifically for the children, for their
Yes.
safety. So what are the parents doing, driving their kids to school and as an alternative?
Yeah, so two
that's their
things.
immediate,
Yes.
that's what they're doing?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's just a couple middle
Right.
schoolers now,
Right.
and there's a couple high schoolers, some of whom do go this route.
So 5 or 6 kids?
5 or 6 kids right now, but there's 27 on the street.
Oh, okay.
So there's a bunch that are in elementary school that are like, I have a high schooler, a middle schooler, and an elementary schooler. We're all Don Darrow kids here, and so we got a 5th grader coming up. We have a large group of 4th and 3rd graders coming up as well. So this is just coming years.
Okay.
And the other part for the high school, when they go to that, is that there's also a cut through here. There's a trail here. And so that's used, I think, not just by our neighborhood, but I believe, and I don't know this because I'm not watching in the morning, but this neighborhood here crosses and they cut through this trail. But they could put a fence up tomorrow too, as far as I know. This controlled intersection where there's a crosswalk intersects with this trail, but the sidewalk does not extend.
Yeah.
And so clearly there's some kind of expected usage there, but there was here too.
So in the morning, so the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders they're getting driven now. Those are the kids that were cutting through in the morning.
Driven, or we went with our daughter up to here to get her to cross the lot.
And I understand about Don Darrow. You're either bused there or you're dropped off by a
Yeah, but a
parent.
middle schooler too.
Okay.
So we get her across here
Yeah.
so that she's safe going up that way.
And the high schoolers are a little bit more mature now to maneuver that.
Still
but
dangerous.
Yeah, it's still.
And the part too is that I don't know all the details of the dispute which led to a fence all of a sudden. But of course you're going to get, the fence doesn't go like this. And then I don't know what the situation is with the homeowners over here, but I certainly don't want to send, I don't want to send my 16-year-old, but definitely not my 13 and my 10-year-old to get into a dispute with neighbors. Someone who says you're not allowed on here, and now you have an adult who's maybe been the catalyst for a fence.
Yeah.
Speaking to a middle schooler.
It seems like sitting here in this chair, it seems like the cities, what they did is talk to
That's happening now.
That's
but we don't
happening
have a
right now,
resolution
so-
or anything.
So that's an immediate response, which is great.
Okay. So I guess for us, what's the next thing that we as residents who are all very interested and committed, what's the next thing that we should be looking for and doing?
Well, I think you did the right thing. You got a lot of information for us here. You got the whole neighborhood's input. What we now have to do, since we don't know what the solution is to defer to our staff and say, with all that's going on, what do you recommend that we can do either in the short term or in the longer term? Sometimes applications, which I've learned at my time in the parking, traffic, and safety, like for instance, if we put a crosswalk in and there's not enough traffic on the crosswalk, it's actually more dangerous because people see the crosswalk, they assume it's safe to cross, but because there's so little foot traffic, the cars that are driving, and it's usually neighborhood traffic that drives all the time, and people just don't see the crosswalk. So you have a conflict there where somebody thinks it's safe to cross because there's a crosswalk, but cars, because they don't ever see pedestrian traffic, ignore it. So sometimes what we do is actually not safer. It's counterintuitive. So we want to make sure we don't respond in a way that we're going to be counterproductive, but we do want to make sure we respond with anything we can respond with, because this is a situation that was created fairly instantaneously.
Yes, and I think we had a Zoom call, Eric, with probably 2 years ago about the speed and all these issues up here. And so that's the way I think we're hoping from a traffic perspective is there something which is easier, faster to do in an immediate way that slows traffic on Greenleaf?
So, Mr. Chairman, we'll look at that again. This issue is not surprising to us. It is something that we've been aware of. We have, as you said, we had that Zoom call a while ago, but it wasn't driven specifically for the pedestrian aspect of it, but it was really that intersection itself, which, the pedestrian usage of that intersection is part and parcel of it. We have been thinking about how do you memorialize or how do you, make permanent some of those cut-throughs that exist. So I would encourage you to continue to advocate for this, for your neighborhood. We are responsive to folks bringing challenges forward, and it's something that staff needs to come, look hard at it, look and see what we can do in the short term, and what we can, propose for, capital project type stuff. The intersection and speeds on that it's a challenge. We had hoped by signalizing Andrew Jarvis, more people would go down to the signalized intersection at the bypass instead of going straight down Greenleaf. We've thrown out the idea about, changing and making a one-way and things like that. It wasn't real at the time we talked about it. There wasn't a lot of stomach for that from the neighborhood. But, yes, it's inconvenient to have to go down to the bypass and come around, but it may help with the through traffic. And get rid of that one aspect of it. But I think there's a number of steps we'll look at, and by the next meeting we should have something. And if we can implement something in the near term between then, we will.
Okay. And what's the? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just suggesting a neighborhood meeting and using this couple as our contact. We've done that with other issues in neighborhoods, and I think because of the number of children in this neighborhood increasing numbers, I think this is really important. This is a real issue for this neighborhood. It's a real safety issue, and I would like to see us have a meeting with the neighbors.
I agree. However, I would like to wait until we have some options, because we know the problem.
Yeah.
We don't need to get together to hear a lot of people express their concerns, because we know their concerns.
Well, yeah, when we have a meeting, as Andrew just did, it's important for the staff to explain why certain things are done or not done. And I think that's what I would like to see in a neighborhood meeting, so that if we come up with ideas and present it to the neighborhood rather than presenting it to this committee.
As all of our projects, Mary Lou, we have
just
public
asking
meetings.
for it, just clarifying.
I think that's a great suggestion.
Just
Eric,
clarifying.
and then Mark.
Oh, I was going to say that what Peter said, where I think we have a great summary of what the concerns are. So I think a neighborhood meeting is a great idea. I just don't think it will be efficient until we have some ideas of what some improvement.
What can be done.
Yep. Mark.
I'm not sure about efficient. What's your name?
Greg.
Ray?
Greg.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Greg.
I'm sorry, Greg. So Peter mentioned advocacy. A good way to advocate is through the Citywide Neighborhood Committee. it'll give you an avenue to voice your thoughts, feelings, and ideas and stuff. It can't hurt to go in that, and that will help, because it's a citywide neighborhood committee, and they listen to that. They also have ward forums. So Ward 4 is a Don Darrow forum.
Okay.
So this is an avenue that you could express how you think and feel your concerns, especially when it comes to the kids.
All right, I definitely will. They can't put up speed bumps.
Right, because you made this effort. It's just, there's other, like Peter said, when it comes to advocating, there's other areas, directions you can go, other groups.
What is the motion that we have on the floor?
There's no motion.
There's no motion.
This is
Discussion.
Just
We
discussion.
suspended to go to miscellaneous.
Does somebody want to make a motion to schedule a neighborhood meeting? And
I would move that we send to staff to report back, and I think I don't want to schedule a neighborhood meeting until we have a staff report to know what we can act on. I'm somewhat inclined, my clear motion is move to staff to report back.
The study and report back?
To study and report back.
Yeah.
I guess I'll pause there and add to discussion.
I think they
Is there
should
a
go through.
second?
They should go through, I'm sorry, Erica.
I mean, we need a second, right?
I'll second. I'm sorry.
Okay. I mean, I don't think they need to go through the neighborhood committee on this because it's already to PTS. I mean, so the neighborhood committee would recommend it to us, and then the next step would be council. So they're already here. And if they're not happy with what we're doing, then I would say council would be the next step. But I think we're going to move quickly on this. We may not have great solutions, but we'll look at all possible viable solutions and get a report back sooner rather than later.
Okay, and then it would be, communicate with me, I'll have an email group that I'll get back out to the neighborhood.
Yes, and you have my contact information, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Okay,
So-
thank you, appreciate the time.
Yep, no, thank you for coming in, and this is great when you do this much work to bring this much data, so it's much appreciated.
It's certainly important for our house, but important for our neighborhood as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Oh,
And Greg,
We have a
do you
motion.
have Greg's contact information?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
so we should probably take a vote on that motion.
Things done.
Could I
Steve?
request
Yeah.
a friendly amendment to the motion that the report back includes legal department status of discussions with the neighbors and
Sure.
focus on short-term improvements and long?
Yep.
Is
That was a long, friendly amendment.
Accept your wordy friendly amendment.
Yeah, but she has to write it.
Yes, right.
We're really putting you through your paces today.
Yeah.
Hey,
And refer to staff to study and report back, including legal review.
Short and long-term solutions.
Yep.
Greg, you guys did a great job. We don't get this often. A map and you're a survey and you're rallying the troops like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Erica?
Yeah, that's
Liz.
great.
I'm going to put this not as an amendment, just for discussion, and maybe this is a separate amendment. Do we want to authorize the city to, like, if it is, I would feel bad if there is a good short-term solution.
I think the city, if it's a safety issue, can just do it.
They can just do it. We don't have to.
Yeah,
I just don't want to wait a month to then vote on it if there is something that could be done.
The thing to remember is the committee does not manage operational functions, so, we have the authority and the resources, or if we have the resources. If we don't have the resources, we'll go to council
Okay.
to ask for it.
Great, thank you.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate the
All
time.
right, and jumping back to old business, A, Sagamore Avenue, request for bicycle lanes and no parking from Shaw Road to Wentworth House Road by Seacoast area bicycle riders. And the sample motion is move to prohibit parking along both sides of Sagamore Avenue between Shaw Road and Wentworth House Road, and to revisit marking of the bike lane after upcoming roadway widening project north of Shaw Road.
So moved.
Second.
And we're running low on time, but is there much to talk about on this one?
It makes sense to do the no parking in the requested area. It's just that the striping of the bike lane wouldn't be done until after the road project, so we do it all at once rather than.
Okay.
You don't want to have a bike lane and a gap and then another bike lane. You want to be consistent throughout the marking.
Has anyone talked to, is that Seacoast Mental Health, or?
Just going to say that.
We have two abutters.
Okay.
We have Seacoast Mental Health and we have Mr. Cates. Now, the declarant still has, as a month
Can I
ago.
keep talking? I wasn't done.
Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
It's okay. like,
Jeez,
have
that's
we?
twice.
It's fine. We gotta go fast, so I want to be coherent here.
2 minutes.
I want to make sure that I'm all in favor of bike lanes, and if we want to prohibit parking, like, I'm not opposed to it. I just want to make sure that we've made sure that they don't need that parking. I mean, it seems like they have a decent amount of parking there. I just want to talk to them before we say, do your patients?
Haven't we, I thought in the past we've spoken to them, and the only folks against it were the Golden Egg at the time,
Okay.
last time we revisited it. So,
That was a
we can
couple of
always,
years ago? That's
we can always double check, but
I guess I support the motion provided we check with them first to make sure we're not causing problems for,
If that's a friendly America, Erica,
I don't know who made the motion. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one with concerns, so I don't.
it's not a big deal to just to, don't approve, we can just say,
approve. I don't.
just say approval contingent upon, confirmation that it's not a problem.
Great.
Good.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on. B, State Street two-way traffic study, request for report back on status by City Council. And I believe this is in the works, but not
Yes,
quite there.
That's correct. We're working on finalizing the final memorandum, and we will look at that. That should be ready for this committee to review next month.
Okay. And then C, Marcy Street, further discussion of pedestrian crossing and vehicle speeds. This is the one we were considering putting up a sign, realized the sign wasn't really going to address the issue that was brought to our attention. And I don't believe we have any good solutions, so the sample motion would be to move to place on file.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Informational monthly accident report from Deputy Chief of Police.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the month of July, we had 88 reportable crashes, which is down 1 from June. So we're trending right around normal.
Great, thank you. South Mill Street and Pickering Avenue intersection parking restrictions. Informational.
Yes, there was a. Thought I had a diagram here. This one here. Okay, so just following up, this is really about this corner here at South Mill Street and Pickering Ave. Our thought and intent was to just not anything new, just go out to enforce the existing ordinances. This was a problem on this corner as well, similar to making the turns at these other intersections. And that's why we looked at this on the site walk on Tuesday. It's not any new restrictions, it's just enforcing what's in the ordinance, which is 20 feet to an intersection.
Now, at the sidewalk, did we decide that we might be able to use the telephone pole and maybe not go to the full letter of the law of the ordinance so we could save one parking spot?
Yeah, I think
On
this is
South
the
Mill
pole
Street.
right here.
Yeah.
And the thought was to keep this spot.
Right. So kind of a compromise there.
Yeah, I mean, it's, for larger vehicles, they need the room to turn, but, it's a matter of compromising and what works best.
And this is all existing stuff?
Yeah, no changes were proposed. It was just a matter of enforcing existing ordinance.
Okay, and moving on, Woodbury Avenue speed cushions update.
So I'm sorry, was the decision that we were going to go ahead and post that? This is advisory that that was Eric, so we're just advising folks that this is what we're going to do.
That's what we're going to do, but looking for feedback from this group as to hold off on it, go ahead with it.
Why don't we bring it at the next meeting as an agenda item so people can talk about it?
Good idea.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And actually, I'd like some clarification. I heard Esther say that there's a pin marking her property, and you pointed it out.
There's 2 pins. I pointed out one, and you made a good point based on where her but,
Why don't we
It
just
looked
There's 2
like
pins there.
Yeah, and I wasn't
showed you
clear
one.
on whether
Yeah.
where the property line was relative to
I'm
the
sure
area.
Esther has a map.
I think in the interest of time, why don't we prepare that data for the next meeting?
Yeah, I'm just saying that I'm supportive of
Yeah.
putting it off because I wasn't quite clear on what
And
was
some
what.
of those neighbors there on South Mill weren't there. There's 3 or 4 houses there. And
Yeah, so let's post it
they were
for,
not there. That's why I mentioned the flyers and letting people know.
Yeah, and Chief, if possible, maybe we can revisit the use of that area with your vehicles, and we'll look as well with the Packer truck to see.
and then Woodbury Avenue, which,
Deer Street. We
oh,
skipped Deer
sorry.
Street.
Jumping ahead. Deer Street.
Deer Street. So if you're familiar with what's going on in Deer Street, we have a lot of construction projects coming up. Lot 5 will be redeveloped. Lot 3 will be a new hotel. This Lot 6 is under construction right now. 238 Deer will be micro apartments. That building's coming down, a new one's going up in its place. They all happen at once, and so it's a thought, and right now is a recommendation of city staff is to make Deer Street one-way during construction from Maplewood Ave down to Bridge Street. And this would be one-way 24/7 during construction. And these parking spaces here would be encumbered by the developers. One of the travel lanes would be used as well to give more room for construction deliveries and vehicles and work vehicles. There would be an area in front of 238 Deer Street that's also cordoned off and be licensed by that developer for the street. So looking to probably start this one-way flow by the end of the year as construction ramps up on these 3 sites.
So this, Mr. Chair, if I could, this is a great example, Mary Lou, of the types of things that get discussed as part of the CMMP, and it's not a parking, traffic, and safety purview. It is really, but we want to bring it to you for informationals because people are going to come to you and say, hey, what's going on? What's up with that? But I got to tell you, we probably had a dozen meetings going over this. And it's a lot of thought that's gone into this, and we understand the impacts associated with construction, and this is a big deal.
And this will probably go on for a couple of years just because of so many projects.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Erica?
Are they renting the street space, or okay, great.
Is there anything over 30 days that it comes to council and we?
Well, even if they rent them, whether it's 30 days or not.
Okay, but if it's more than 30 days, we have to approve
Yeah,
it.
it becomes a license agreement after 30 days.
In this particular condition, our recommendation is that the travel lane be closed off as far as public safety is concerned, and that there wouldn't be a fee for that, but they would be paying for the parking spaces and any other sidewalk space that they're using.
The developer didn't request that.
Okay, that was city initiated.
The one-way
City
travel
initiated.
we're recommending.
Yes.
But if they're putting stuff in the travel lane, they would.
If they're squatting in the space and putting things there permanently, then they're paying for those spaces, that square footage. If it's as required by us because we feel it's a concern, then it's ours. So it's a combination. The one-way, the loss of the travel lane was our direction. The use of the sidewalk and is their benefit.
Thanks.
All right, and
RFB lights.
I think we're the last one.
Peter, how many RFB lights do you have there? 4, 5?
There's 2 at this crosswalk, and then there's one advance around the corner here.
It's 3. Yeah.
All right, the Woodbury Avenue speed cushions update.
So we have some data now. We've had the 2 sets of cushions in place up near Echo Ave for 2 weeks now, 2.5 weeks. So before the cushions went in, we were seeing average speeds of 29 miles an hour. Now with the speed cushions in place, it's down to 20 miles an hour. So they're certainly having an impact on speeds in this section of Woodbury. One item we do see is, though, that because of the high volume on Woodbury, you do get a lot of people who slow down probably too much at these speed bumps and causing a lot of ripple effect congestion in that sense. So that's something to keep an eye on. We don't want to have rear-end accidents as a result of these. We're trying to improve the safety, not make it worse. So it's something we're continuing to monitor, see how it does.
Okay.
And the final plan was to have 8 of these all along. We've got 2 in place. We had 2 down there. There is 4 other locations that we would put them. But it's been a very arduous process to get these in place. That the road has concrete underneath it. I don't know how this committee feels about moving these again to another location or just leave them in place as they are now, because
I think the less locations we need to study, probably the better in most people's opinion.
Yeah.
Does anybody else in the committee have feedback on that?
Yeah, I did. I had two people, 2 separate people making 2 separate phone calls to my business line. So what's happening is DPW does their trash removal, and people understand that the traffic backs up, you can't get out or into your driveway. Okay, but they're noticing, like you said, is that when you go over the bump, you're going a lot slower, and it's causing traffic back up. And so what's the number? 7,000 cars a day.
Yeah, we're seeing close to 10,000 in this one right
What
now.
I'm hearing on average is, I think the current plan has how many speed tables or speed bumps being?
8.
8, okay. So I think people are really hung up on that. The residents there, those two people on the left side, you're heading into town, were concerned that, it's backing up, and it's really going to back up with 7,000 cars a day with speed bumps.
Yeah.
So it's the bigger picture that they're concerned about if you're living there, if you're on that street.
So
But-
the irony is we're doing it because.
We tried to do islands and we were overruled.
Unfortunately, there's always that quiet population out there that be careful what you wish for. But these weren't people that weren't advocating for or against it. They were just sitting back watching, and a lot of people do that. We all know that.
How much longer are we, because we're moving for winter, is that like an October thing, a November thing?
Yeah, probably October, you don't want to get caught out there with snow.
Okay, so about a month more of data. So I don't think moving them makes any sense then, because by the time you got it set up.
Sorry. Jeez, I'm on a bad habit today. Twice to you, once to you. Sorry about that. Are we going to go back and solicit information from the people that live on Woodbury Avenue?
Well, we have all winter to
reach out.
Let's wait till we're complete, and then once we have all the data, we can decide if we want to make any
I didn't
modifications.
say neighborhood meeting. I didn't say that.
Well,
I just said solicit their thoughts, feelings, and ideas.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yep.
Peter.
We've had a number of neighborhood meetings relative to this. We had a number of suggestions as alternatives on how to proceed. This was the consensus, and so we, other than the fact that we'll say, we're going out to bid for construction, I do not see any utility to continuing discussion of this, because there's going to be people that don't like it no matter what. It is shown that it is very effective.
Yeah.
So.
Erica?
I have a new topic. Are we ready to move on?
Yes, we'll do a second miscellaneous.
I'm really sorry. I know we've been here forever.
Mr. Chairman, I have an limit.
Yeah, of course.
Jump out.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you, Deputy Chief.
I'm sorry. I know we need to go, but I've seen a lot of pretty dangerous operations at the Elwyn and South intersection where Little Harbor, the access to Little Harbor. The way that bicycles are supposed to navigate that intersection is really tricky, where functionally they're supposed to ride on the sidewalk to get to the crosswalk to get to the mixed-use path, but technically bicycles aren't supposed to be, they're not legally allowed on the sidewalk, and there's tons of kids that ride and walk to school, which is a great thing, but it means that you've got kids on bikes plowing past people walking on I just don't think I don't know, there's something there that's not working well.
Is the line no longer there? Because didn't there used to be a line that said bikes on one side and...
There is on the mixed-use path, but to get onto the mixed-use path.
So you mean on Elwyn Avenue itself?
On
before
Elwyn
the
and
crossing guard?
South before the crosswalk.
Okay.
And then so during before school time or after school time, that's kind of it's tricky to get to and from the mixed-use path when you're on a bicycle. If you're walking, it's great. It's tricky because it's congested, but also the route that you take as a bicycle is tricky. After hours, it's also I've seen a couple close calls recently. A kid very close to getting just annihilated
By a car?
By a car. And it was in the evening, and they didn't ride over and hit the flashing button because on a bicycle it's really hard to get over to hit the RFB button. And the car was just flying down South Street. I mean,
We did just move a speed back sign on South Street. That should potentially help with that, at least lowering speeds there.
It's up on the upside.
Oh, is it on the other side?
Yeah, it's up on there.
yeah. So I don't know if maybe you can observe it, and maybe we can talk about it next month, but it just isn't working as well as I think it could, and I think it merits some attention given the just volume of people using it.
And not to discount the concern, but education of the riders is really critical, that they should not be darting out, they should stop, and it's
Totally, but it's a tricky,
Oh, I know it is, and I'm not discounting what you're saying. I just want to
I teach my kids they're not allowed to ride on the sidewalk, but then
kids are aware and they take
safely
responsibility as well.
Cross, they have to ride on the sidewalk, which is that's a mixed, there's just a lot of mixed messages around the design there.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying.
Mark?
Does Little Harbor School itself put out any notices in relationship to walking and riding a bike to school?
There are so many notices when you're a parent that you probably, if they do, they probably won't. They probably don't see them.
Yeah.
Question for the Public Works Director. Would that be an instance where perhaps a stop sign for the bike path before the intersection, like similar to out at Pease?
That's a good suggestion.
Just as we're sitting here talking about it, I know exactly what you're speaking of.
The side that's the issue.
It's the Elwyn side?
It's, and just the visibility and the crossing guard, it has had so many close calls out there in the morning. I mean, it's speeds on South Street and just the route, especially bicyclists need to take to get on to the mixed use. I mean, maybe they shouldn't be on the mixed use path. I tell my kids to ride in on the street there because I think it's too dangerous to get onto the mixed use path.
Well, why don't we bring this back for the next meeting? Because I don't, especially since we've run over. But I appreciate you bringing
As
it to
you're
our
taking
attention.
your kids to school, take some measurements.
Yes.
Kind of have, but
Sorry.
No, go.
Request for discussing electric scooters on the sidewalks. I've had people tell me close calls, and it's usually kids, but adults, they're riding their electric stand-up scooters on the sidewalks. And we don't have an ordinance specific to that. We do for mopeds and bicycles, but we don't, this is new this summer. It's so prevalent. I'm sure you've seen it. So I'd like to bring it up as a, I don't know if City Council has talked about it, if anybody's talked to City Council members, but I know of 2 recent close calls with, because you can't really hear them. All of a sudden they're on your heel.
Okay.
Anyway.
I do think we have some sort of ordinance on scooters, but I think it's to commercial operations like the Bird scooters
where
was,
park
maybe
them.
not privately owned ones.
These are kids.
Future agenda item.
Future agenda item. Pardon me?
Big issue, future agenda item.
Yeah.
In your industry,
future.
for an engineering, for traffic.
That's what I
Is there a
said.
generic
Future.
term? So you got bicycles, electric scooters, but there's also, what are those one wheel?
Well, let's talk
All right.
about
Well,
it.
why don't we get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Get out of here.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Yeah, let me-